Greetings, hoop heads, and welcome back to Jersey Jump Shot, where we eat, breathe, and sleep college basketball in the great Garden State. Happy Garden State Hardwood Classic Week. In this episode, we will literally be discussing hardwood as Rutgers and Seton Hall play this Saturday for the Boardwalk Trophy. If you're listening to this podcast, you've probably seen the trophy, nearly 3 feet high, weighing 33 pounds, made of Asbury Park boardwalk planks that were discarded after Superstorm Sandy. The guy who made this thing in 2014, this thing of beauty, is artist and woodworker Colin Pezzano, a New Jerseyan, of course, who hails from Sewell in Gloucester County. Colin, thank you for joining us on Jersey Jump Shot.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, let's go back to 2014. What are your recollections when you were first approached to create this trophy by Rutgers administrator Kevin Lorenz? And we got to give Kevin a shout out for the concept and collecting the boardwalk planks. What do you remember about first hearing about this? And had you ever paid attention to Rutgers-Seton Hall before?
Well, first I want to say Kevin's a great guy. It was a really, really nice time working with him. And back in 2014, I had just graduated college and I was living on a farm. So Kevin reached out to me. I think I'd gotten an award after graduating, and I was in the newspaper, like as a woodworker. And Kevin reached out to me and was like, "I have this crazy idea. Are you interested in participating?" And I was like, "Sure," And we had this like back and forth a couple of times, and then he came down to the farm and hung out for a little bit, and we talked more. And I don't really have a big background in basketball, but I was really, really excited to do the project, and it was a lot of fun to do something new.
You said you were on a farm, and this was in Cumberland County at the time. Is that right?
It was in Bridgeton, New Jersey.
In Bridgeton, way down south. You're on a farm. So what was your studio in, like a barn? Do you have like chickens walking around while you're forging this thing, or how did that work?
Yeah, I was living on a farm with an artist and his wife, and I was living in like an Airstream trailer. And the deal was that I got to live on the farm and use the workshop that he had in exchange for, gardening and taking care of the animals and stuff like that. So it was an interesting time.
So like where did you actually make the trophy? Like, was it freezing cold in some barn, or was it out in the open, or where was it? Where was your studio?
So the guy that I was living with had like a wood shop studio.
Okay.
And yes, it was very cold.
Yeah, because you're getting this thing probably in like the November, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
All right. What was the most challenging aspect of creating it?
It's always difficult trying to envision what somebody else is envisioning, and you just always hope that you're going to hit your mark. I think from what you said and what other people said, they seem pretty excited about it. So that's a huge relief. Using reclaimed material is always difficult because you don't really know what you're getting. So using the boardwalk was an interesting thing. Using eBay as a material that I had never used before, which is the wood that the boardwalk is made out of. So
what kind of wood is that?
eBay.
Was that a good wood? Is that or is that hard to work with?
It is hard to work with. It is a rainforest wood, but if you get your deck built out of eBay, you have like a 200-year warranty on your deck, so it holds up. As you can see, it survived through Sandy, and
right.
We made it into a trophy. So
if it can survive Sandy and all the boardwalk traffic of Asbury Park, then it can definitely survive being passed around among a dozen players, once a year, right?
I think so, yeah.
That's amazing. So let's talk about the base of the trophy. I don't think enough people realize that the base of the trophy, which is very heavy, is dimpled. Tell us about the creation of this dimpled base that sort of resembles a basketball grip.
Yeah, so there's this repair technique that you can use when you have like a dent in a piece of wood. It doesn't mean that there's material missing. It means that the fibers are pushed down. So what you can actually do is you can lay down water, like a wet towel, and you get an iron and you steam it, and that dent pops back up. So what we did was I flattened a screw on a grinder and I dented all the way around the base, and then I sanded so all those dimples disappeared. So it looked flat. And then when I steamed it, all those compressed dimples popped back up, and all the rest of the wood that was higher was lower now. so
Oh,
the dimples popped up.
how about that? That's amazing. I never would have thought of that, but that's why you're the expert, and I'm just talking here.
It was an experiment,
The,
and it worked out. So
It did. It sure did. So the logos on the trophy, how often, you have the Rutgers Block R, the Seton Hall, Pirate Head. How often do they need to be refreshed?
so I'm sure if you look at like the early photos of when we first set this thing up, the logos look a little different. So
Yes.
the first couple years, we went through a few iterations, a little bit of a back and forth of like, because the first time I had done it, it was with a stencil that I had made myself. And, the contrast wasn't super high because of the dark wood. So the following year, I believe it was Seton Hall that was, suggested, oh, can we have some white in the background? And I was like, okay, cool. Like we'll do that. So then I hired a friend who was a screen printer to do the new logo, which is the one that exists now. And then Rutgers was like, hey, we need ours to be brighter also. And I was like, okay. So it was a little bit of a back and forth of like, oh, theirs is brighter than ours. Oh, theirs is brighter than ours. And then we finally got to this point where, where we are today. So it hasn't been touched up since.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
but every year when I take it back to engrave the names of the winners, I do a new coat of finish. So it has a good buildup of protection on it.
Yeah, and I want to ask you about that, but it's funny you mentioned that. Like that's the rivalry in a nutshell, right? Like ours needs to be brighter. Ours needs to be brighter. Not surprising. Yeah, that's it. How often? So the process for engraving it each year, you'll drive up, take the trophy back. I heard you have a custom case for it. Is that right?
I have a system. I don't have a custom case for it, but the
Okay.
system is that I have moving blankets and I wrap it up every time and I put it in the seat and I lock it into the seat belt, So we have a system. No case though.
How long does it take you to do the engraving?
Um, well, it's all done by hand, so it takes a little bit of time for me to like be in the right mindset for it. So I look at it for a long time, and then I do the pencil layout, and then maybe like a day or two later is when I'll do the actual burning, which takes about like a couple hours.
But you got to make sure there's some pressure here, Colin, because you got to make sure they're all the same size. Like if one year's engraving for the winner is bigger than other years, people are going to squawk.
Yeah,
They're going to notice.
yeah. There's a little bit of a dialogue about that too.
Yeah, I bet. So interesting. So have you ever been to the game, or have you seen it on TV?
I've seen the games on TV. I've never been. I would really like to go sometime. I know there's been offers out there to invite me to a game, and I'd love to go sometime.
I think that's a must, and I hope some Seton Hall or Rutgers administrators watching this will follow up with that and get you a spot. And you know what? They should get you a VIP seat. Courtside. I was going to say press row, but there's people with better seats than me. They should get you a courtside seat, and that you should present the trophy one of these years when it works out with your schedule. You should actually present the trophy after the game. I think that would be an awesome touch. Would you like to do that at some point, Colin?
I would love to do that. Maybe sit me at like half court so there's no discrepancy of whose side I'm on.
Right in the middle, right? So no one can complain. And by the way, make sure you wear neutral colors.
Yes.
I learned that the hard way. We all have. All right. When you see photos of the winning players every year holding the trophy and parading around with it with hundreds of screaming fans around them, what's that like for you? These are lifetime memories for some of these people.
That's the whole thing that it's about, right? Is when you have a commission, you hope that the thing that you are working on is valued and hits the mark. I think is the right word to say.
Right.
So it feels really great to know that I'm a small footnote in this lineage of this rivalry, which is very exciting.
It's a great footnote. Tell us a little bit about your craft, Colin. What range of things you've created, what some of your personal favorites are, what do people typically contact you looking for? Just give us an idea of what you do and as an artist and woodworker.
There's a pretty wide range of the things that I do. I surprisingly do a lot of dog urns for people, furniture work. I do cabinetry kind of stuff, and then I have my own art practice, which is a different thing. It's a lot of sculpture, and I just recently released a graphic novel that's all in woodcuts.
Oh wow!
So it's whatever comes my way and is interesting. I have a day job, so things have changed a little bit, and I can be a little bit more selective with my commission
Right.
work, which is nice. But it's whenever there's something interesting, I'm always down to do it.
Have you done another trophy, or is this the only one?
I had another school reach out to me about a trophy, but that was a couple of years ago, and they decided to put a hold on it, and maybe we'll do it in the near future.
All right, Colin, how can people reach you if they want to contact you, if they want to see more of your work? Like, what's the best method to find out more about Colin Pezzano?
I have a website and I have a newsletter that I update kind of often. I try not to be too annoying, but I try to offer things like process shots in the studio. I try to make a playlist for everyone. Let you know what I'm doing. Other than that, I have an Instagram and it's just Colin Pezzano on Instagram.
You're on Instagram, Colin Pezzano, and that's Pezzano. And then your website is www.colinpezzano.com, right?
Correct.
Super. I think we've covered it. This is great stuff, Colin. We appreciate you doing this. Every year we'll be thinking of you when that trophy gets held aloft. And yes, we will follow up one of these years. The creator of the Boardwalk Trophy will present it at the Garden State Hardwood Classic. Deal?
Deal.
All right, folks. That's Colin Pezzano joining us on Jersey Jump Shot. Colin, thank you very much. Enjoy the game Saturday and hope to see you down the road.
Thank you so much for having me. Have a good one.
All right, that was fun. That's something a little different. We're going outside the box for the this year's installment of the Rivalry Series and our preview of it. Good guy and a fantastic artist. And if the trophy is 33 pounds, folks, if you ever get a chance to hold it, that thing is built to last. And now you get an idea of why that Boardwalk wood has a 200-year guarantee. So whoever's running this game in 200 years, if it's still going on, that trophy's still going to be there. That's a pretty cool thought. All right, good stuff. Let's go down the list and talk some things. Rutgers-Seton Hall thoughts as we head into the rivalry game. I was thinking about this and the differences right now where the teams are at. Seton Hall's 9-1, Rutgers is 5-5. They're sort of in different stratospheres at the moment. Seton Hall has the 17th most experienced team in the country. This is according to Ken Palm, with an average age of 2.43 years of D1 experience. Rutgers is the 225th oldest at 1.29 years. So Seton Hall's team has almost twice as much experience in Division I basketball as Rutgers' team had coming into the season. And that's something that Shaheen Holloway, really made an effort to look for in the transfer portal. Last year, Seton Hall the average experience was 1.74 years. They were ranked 186th. So they made a quantum leap in terms of their experience, whereas Rutgers kind of went backwards. You think of a Rutgers team that was young last year, and it certainly was with their young stars and, a five-man freshman class, four of whom played a lot. But last year, Rutgers their average experience was 1.57 years, and that was ranked 222nd in the country. So this year, Rutgers went backwards in terms of experience. That experience number went down, whereas Seton Hall skyrocketed, just about doubled. And, Seton Hall's playing one freshman, Rutgers is playing five. So there's some roster construction things that I think go into what you're seeing. Shaheen Holloway, the GM, did a really good job. We'll get into that in a minute. But just as a quick aside, how much did roster budgets influence this? And I say roster budgets because NIL is kind of a misused term. Roster budgets consist of both revenue share provided by the school and NIL provided by fans and sponsors. So really that's the term I want to use. Definitely a good deal. It has a good deal to do with where teams are at, right? And so Seton Hall took advantage of the NCAA greenlighting revenue share to give Shaheen Holloway a competitive war chest. I'm not going to put an actual number on it. Trying to get figures on this stuff is really hard because you hear all kinds of different stuff. And let's be honest, people are incentivized to distort the numbers. Administrators want fans to know they're funding the program adequately. Coaches have to deal with agents that they might use the roster budget figure as a weapon in negotiations in the spring. Look how Kentucky's getting dunked on right now for its $22 million roster. That number is become weaponized. So I get it. When I put a number out there, it's like bringing up politics at Thanksgiving dinner. Everyone jumps all over you. So after being pulled in a lot of different directions, I'm just gonna say that Seton Hall, gave Shaw some funding. He did, and Shaw, the GM, learned a lot in terms of roster construction from last season. He got guys who are coachable, hungry, unselfish, tough, smart. He was really able to weigh and assess the intangibles, and those intangibles are at least as important as measurables. I was looking at the end of last year's game. I update every year my crazy series, History of Hijinks, and I was looking at the end of last year's Rutgers-Seton Hall game as Dylan Harper hits, rattles in an incredible 28-foot shot to break a tie game at the buzzer and lift Rutgers to victory at the rack. But watching the last play, Seton Hall's point guard, Garway Dowell, he leaves Harper and lets Harper drive up the court basically unchallenged, and Dowell takes 2 steps once Harper crosses midcourt. Dowell takes 2 steps from the right side of the court to the middle of the court to double team Jordan Durkak. Like, what are you doing there? And so, Dylan Harper is no dummy. The guy's a super smart player. Sees that he's got green light. He's got daylight. Drives up, squares up, and hits a shot. Takes a clear jumper that goes in. So that's a kind of like low IQ play that it's an intangible there. Like Garway Dowell did not have that. Did not have that intangible. And look at this year's Seton Hall team. You think Bud Clark or Trey Parker is going to allow that? Look at the way they defended Kansas State's PJ Haggerty, holding him, completely shutting him down in that last game. Seton Hall wins in Manhattan, Kansas. And again, that's not to take anything away from Dylan Harper. It was an awesome shot and earned his way. 28-footer is a 28-footer. And he earned his way into a high place in the Rutgers-Seton Hall pantheon. But in speaking of like the things I think Shaheen Holloway learned, he went for the experience and also to weigh those intangibles much more heavily than like somebody's measurables. And a guy like Bud Clark may not compare to. He didn't have the high school rankings of Garway Dowell. He doesn't have the the length, et cetera, the height. But the guy's got intangibles that Shaheen Holloway wants. And I talked to them about that today. We'll have an article out, I think on Wednesday, going into more detail about what Shah saw in these guys as he weighed those intangibles, going through the portal. And these guys that have come in and played really well and together and hungry and unselfish. And you look at Kansas State, supposedly a really big roster budget there. It's a team of chuckers who they didn't look hungry at all. There was no concept of teamwork. They looked soft, and they got punched in the throat and collapsed by Seton Hall. So intangibles really matter a lot when you go and putting these rosters together, especially when you're rebuilding almost from scratch every year, it seems like. And Seton Hall and Shaw, the GM, got that really right this year, and the credit goes to him. Long way to go here, but 9-1. It looks like he really got it right. And Rutgers, I think this is a good example of why, Steve Peichel has been asking for a GM, and he finally got one after 2 years of asking for one. In the old transfer portal days, Steve had a lot of success in finding the one plug-in guy. There was Akwasi Yeboah from Stony Brook. There was Jacob Young from Texas. There was Cam Spencer coming out of Loyola. And those were not obvious additions at the time. Jacob Young was well regarded coming out of high school. Didn't really play a ton at Texas, but those were one guy plug-ins who were great fits. It's like Steve knows how to find a plug-in guy, but it's now to do this en masse, so to speak. And every year you got to recreate most of your roster and to do it, without the help of a budget that's competitive with a lot of your peers in your league and a dedicated GM is proven to be overwhelming. And I think you see some of the result of that in the way Rutgers is constructed this year. I was the one who asked Matt Painter after that Purdue came to the rack and won. Steve Peichel played all these freshmen the whole second half. And I asked Painter what he thought of that. And Painter's great. He's one of those deans of the sport, like Tom Izzo, like Rick Pitino. When you ask him these big picture questions and you get a real answer. Painter said, yeah, it's great. If it's a great thing to do to play freshmen. If you can keep them the next year, if you can't keep them, then what's the point? And so Rutgers has this, what's going to be a season-long audition for 5 or 6 freshmen. You're going to get a lot of sample size on what these guys can do and decide who you can move forward with And then with you add the right veterans from the portal, you make the right judgments around the guys who you think you can develop, and you bring them in, and it fits good. And that's, you can turn this around quickly. And that's kind of what Seton Hall did. Now, Seton Hall only had 2 guys come back, and they brought in 10 new guys, and that's their entire rotation right now because the 2 returnees are hurt. But the point is, and we saw this with Missouri the year before, and I kind of spent some podcast time last season talking about the Missouri model. Like, you can reload and rebuild fast now if you can get the right support and learn from your mistakes. And I think that's what we've seen with Seton Hall this year. So on the game itself, I'll have a score prediction later this week, but I would just caution everyone that these games have been screwy and highly unpredictable. It's kind of coach speak to say throw the records out. I do believe that to a degree here. When these teams meet, let's go over the last few years. Last year, Seton Hall was completely left for dead, and they came within a whisker of shocking Rutgers at the rack. The year before, Rutgers comes into the Rock, and that was a 25-win Seton Hall team they beat, and pretty handily, and led that game pretty much the whole way. The year before that, Seton Hall staggers into the Rack off a terrible feast week showing and shocks Rutgers in that 45-43, that lowest scoring game ever. The year before that, Rutgers is coming in off beating number 1 Purdue. Seton Hall's coming in off beating number 7 Texas. Everyone's expecting an epic game. It was not an epic game. Seton Hall won by like 15, pretty much going away. So the point is of that, all that is, these games rarely follow the script. And I'm sure there'll be some surprises Saturday. So I'll get more into the matchups later in the week, but I just don't foresee it following the script. The games just don't follow the script. A lot of the heat has come off in terms of like the antagonism between the players. These 2 coaches obviously like and respect each other. The players don't really know each other. They haven't really, none of Seton Hall's guys have played in this game before. So I think a lot of the old angst and hijinks, the chippiness, the technical fouls, the ejections, a lot of that, the comments, the commentary afterwards from the players, I think a lot of that has sort of been diminished or lessened because of just the nature of the sport now with the high turnover. But that doesn't mean the game won't be, it's not a rivalry game to fans. That doesn't mean it won't be screwy and unpredictable. And the last few years, it still has been. Regarding, the game, it's like the game's importance. I wrote something today after interviewing Brian Felt about it, Seton Hall's AD, to people who would say, you have some people say, why does this game still matter? The players they're not as into it as they once were. Seton Hall and Rutgers have not been in the same conference for over a decade, but the fans still care. This is 9 straight sellouts in the series, and the game makes money, and it's a high major home and home. I mean, so if this game wasn't scheduled, you're gonna have come pay Canisius $100,000 to come in with 4,000 people there, and just to drop an anvil on Canisius's head. You're gonna pay them $100,000 so half-filled, the quarter-filled arena can watch. You're going to pay Hofstra, which actually has a chance to beat you. You're going to pay them to come up and beat you with maybe 4,000 people in your building. You're going to have a glamour program come in. No glamour program is going to come in to the Rock or the Rack. Any glamour program coming here is going to want the game at MSG, at Madison Square Garden, like North Carolina did with Rutgers, like Kentucky did with Seton Hall in recent years. The leagues used to have these crossovers where like Michigan State had to come to the Rock. Like those are mandated things that are no longer around. So, the programs need money. They have a tough time scheduling at home. Seton Hall's last home and home with a high major was with Maryland. Outside of Rutgers, it's been 6 years. Rutgers has only had 1 in recent years, high major home and home with Wake Forest. It's tough to schedule these games. There's money to be made when your arena's full, when the parking lot's full, when the concession stand lines are jumping. There's a lot of money to be made. These are a big source of revenue. So even if you don't believe in the rivalry as it once was, even if you think the fan passion is diminished, I don't know that it is. Maybe it's not quite what it was. This game still fills a couple of needs, schedule-wise, revenue-wise. And so I think it's going to stay for a long time. The contract's up in 2027. 2 more games after this one. I'm sure it'll be renewed for another 6-year or multi-year stint in the near future. It is great for the sport in the state. And the fans, I think if you're listening to this, you probably are into it enough that you agree. It's great that they play. And I know both coaches agree, which is super important because in college, in high major college sports, it's coaches who really make the schedule and sign off on these games. And both coaches agree. They understand the rivalry. Sheen Holloway's been on both sides of it. Steve Peichel, Sheen Holloway's been in it as a player and a coach. Steve Peichel has both won and lost as a coach. He's reaped the benefits and felt the pain of it. So I think the coaches are on board, and certainly we're on board here. And so I think it's going to continue, and it's worth savoring, even though things have changed some for sure. All right, so that's my sermon on the Garden State Hardwood Classic. I'm looking forward to it. I'm sure something nutty will happen. Maybe not a clothesline or a headbutt, a little headbutt, to quote Jim Burr, a little tap. What? What is he talking about? Jim Burr, crazy like everybody else in this series. But maybe we'll get him on one of these years. Jim Burr is a podcast guest. He probably lives in some place or some cabin with no internet. Anyway, so that's what I got to say about the game. We will recap it, in the next podcast, and we'll have another related guest on. I'm not going to say who yet, but on next week's podcast, we'll have a related guest to the game as a follow-up. And so we'll soak everything we can out of that. Just quickly around the state, St. Peter's on tip of the cap to the Peacocks. They've opened 2-0 in the MAC by sweeping Canisius and Niagara on the road. Tough trip, holding a bus trip to upstate New York. They held those two teams to an average of 50 points, the Peacocks did. Sophomore point guard Bryce Eaton, 28 points and 10 assists between the two games. He's a potential Jersey Jump Shot guest down the road. Peacocks are 4-4 and heading to Georgetown Saturday. They look like they will be a live contender in the MAC. So good for them, good for New Jersey, good for Jersey City. Monmouth, Princeton, they played last week. Monmouth's now 5-5 after beating Princeton by 5 at home and then losing a 12-point game at Georgia Tech. We've said this all along. Monmouth looks like a contender in the CAA. Shout out to Hawks junior forward Jason Rivera-Torres, who's playing really well. He's averaging 14.6 points, 8.1 rebounds, 2.7 assists a game, an all-around force for Monmouth. They're at Fairfield on Sunday, and they host a very good Quinnipiac team Wednesday, December 17th. A lot of mid-major fans' eyes will be on that game, mine too. So that'll be an interesting stretch coming up for the Hawks. Senior guard Jack Collins, who's the undisputed leader, the heart and soul, the 4-year local guy, the pride of Manasquan with Monmouth. He will be our guest on an upcoming episode of Jersey Jump Shot before the holidays. So you'll be looking forward to hearing that. Some Jersey Shore hoop talk mixed in. Princeton is 3-9 now. This is their first 6-game losing streak in a season since 2018. Couple asterisks with this. Their last 5 losses to Temple, Vermont, St. Joe's, Monmouth, and Loyola Chicago were by a grand total of 21 points. That's an average of 4 points per loss. So some decent competition there. And they've been without star guard Dalen Davis, who's still coming back, recovering with a sprained ankle. Plus, a couple of other starters have been injured in and out of the lineup for the Tigers. Get those injuries out of the way now because Ivy League play is where it'll be at for Princeton. They get Merrimack at home this week, Wednesday, December 10th. All right. That's what I got for you. Jersey Jump Shot, Garden State Hardwood Classic Edition. Thanks to Colin Pezzano, woodworker, artist, creator of the Boardwalk Trophy, for coming on. He did it with chickens pecking at his heels. Anyway, that's the image I like to think of it as, part of the lore. And part of the lore will unfold at the Rock this week. I know you'll be watching. I will be too. We'll break it down when we come back next time on Jersey Jump Shot. Oh my goodness, I can't believe it.